I just finished watching one of the greatest anime stories to ever be written. Vinland Saga is a masterpiece of manhood and what it means to reach the pinnacle of masculinity. The main character Thorfinn goes through a series of events that lead into the 5 greatest lessons that us men can learn from. Now, before I break down these 5 lessons through this anime, let's answer what does it mean to be a masculine man. Let's look at Thor's for example. Thor's understood that if you can't walk away from something, then it means you're a slave to it. At one point, Thor's, just like Thorfinn, was a slave to the Viking culture, which consisted of killing innocents, pillaging, gaining power, resources, and became the strongest Viking in the show. It's not until Thor's realized that a true warrior is one that doesn't need a sword to kill, but rather to protect. A true warrior has no enemies, and Thor's had a choice to make at the crossroads. One path was to stay a part of the Viking world, the second was to leave that world and live a simple, peaceful life with his family. The second path was harder because it took Thor to leave one path that was rooted in ignorance and blissful rewards as a Viking, and instead chose the one that required rebuilding himself as a true warrior. Therefore, a masculine man is someone who chooses the harder path of virtue. Just like Thor's, we men have 2 paths in front of us, the choice of vice and virtue. The path of vice promises a life of ease, happiness, and no fear or pain because every desire would be fulfilled. The path of virtue promises no such rewards except morality and courage, temperance, justice, and wisdom. The pillars of true goodness, the touchstones that every great man lives by. This is the path for a life of honor and excellence. You can go ahead and take that path of vice and get every desire fulfilled, but it would mean that you're a sellout. So I have a question for you. Do you want to be a sellout? Or do you want to be a masculine man of virtue? The first thing that Vinland Saga teaches us is that you can't learn a lesson without pain. We see this when Thor, a powerful being, says a true warrior doesn't need a sword. You can even see Askeladd pause for a second and give him respect by asking him to become their leader because he saw that this man in front of him was able to achieve something that a man like him can only dream of. Askeladd went as far as to say that Thor's was worth more than 100 lives. Thor's always wanted Thorfinn to go back to his village and protect his family. Even though Thorfinn knew this internally, he still decided to waste 10 years of his life on vengeance. Now, we can't blame Thorfinn for having these feelings as a 6-year-old kid, but just like Askeladd says, it's been 10 years and you never learn. Thorfinn's ignorance led him to believe he was free, yet he remained a slave to vengeance, a slave to Askeladd and a slave to his misery. His philosophy was rooted in achieving peace after fulfilling his vengeance. How many of us say we'll be good after this exam, after this promotion, after I make this much money? When you have the mentality of being good after reaching something, you're giving yourself the implication that you can't be happy right now, that you can't be present in the moment. So you keep thinking of this mirage of what you think you want. Thorfinn couldn't learn his lesson without experiencing the pain of killing thousands of people, betraying innocents, and after the one guy he wanted to kill ended up dying on his own, he had to deal with the pain of emptiness because that's all he ever lived for. He justified killing all those people for the sake of revenge. He betrayed innocence and went against his father's words. The lesson that we can all learn from Thorfinn is that you have to experience pain in order to learn a lesson. Because you can give someone the answer, tell them the antidote to their problems, but the human being won't listen until experiencing it themselves because that's when the most wisdom is learned. What I found interesting is that Thorfinn experienced more pain from his morality than the physical pain of constant warfare. In episode 3, you see him completely empty and soulless. He was utterly depressed and living by a thread. He was even suicidal, letting soldiers cut him up. It's not until Snake came in and showed him real intent to kill that made Thorfinn realize he still wants to live. But for what reason? This brings me on to my second lesson, which is happiness is not about getting what you want, it's about enjoying what you have. The second season of Vinland Saga takes place on a farm and shows the significance of how much happiness and fulfillment can be attained from a simple life on this farmland. In episode 9, you see Thorfinn in utter pain. You see a man that is being dragged down by corpses like demons haunting him every night, having the same nightmares. He decided to make an oath to never fight against his enemies. That oath got questioned when he chose violence against these bullies that destroyed his wheat. You see him go through torture as he broke his oath. You see a world where everyone is your enemy except for yourself. And the world that his father was a part was one where nobody is your enemy. I thought the show did such a great job at symbolizing this moment because it showed Thor's in a peaceful place with corpses still around his body, and it shows Thorfinn get dragged down to a place worse than hell because he didn't know how to carry the weight of his demons above to the peaceful land. Askeladd advises him to climb out of this shithole, but he must do it with all the weight of the corpses he's killed. The beautiful thing about the scene is that Thor's was able to make peace with every life he took and climb to this peaceful land of no enemies, but Thorfinn still had to figure out how to do this. So we come back to the real world and see Thorfinn Thorfinn change his ways. He makes beautiful connections with the people on the farm. He learns how to farm, fish, through the discipline of doing these chores every single day with these people. He learned the value of family, the joyous laughter you share at the dinner table, the sweet fruits of labor after a hard day at work, the feeling of accomplishing something difficult when you were once a beginner. He builds these beautiful pillars of manhood through these connections on the farm that help shape who he is. For the first time, we see Thorfinn developing a conscience of his own, where in the first half of season 2, he felt like he had no right to speak on these issues and even felt guilty internally for being friends with Einar, a person who suffered from the same actions that Thorfinn would engage in the past. And you even see Thorfinn fight for what he thinks is right against someone who he respects, where before he was fighting for one reason only. He uses his strength to defend the people he loves. This was the second act of violence Thorfinn uses after promising once again to never hurt others, but this time he was doing it for what he thought the right cause was. And the fact that he fought without any weapons showed that he was starting to understand what a true warrior is. Now, in real life, anyone would have died from this encounter, but Thorfinn was ready to die for a cause he believed in. Vinland Saga made me realize it's not about getting what you want in life, but already enjoying and being grateful for what you have. Every day I ask myself, how can I get better, make money, build muscle, get leaner? But when do I ever remind myself how much I already have? How much do we take for granted? How much time do we actually spend appreciating and defending the everyday peace we take for granted? The thing about gratitude is that it's a skill that needs reminding every single day, because once you get caught up in the day-to-day action, you forget how truly blessed you are. This is why the Stoics used to practice taking away daily pleasures such as sleeping on a pillow, fasting from food. They would even get rid of their most prized possessions because it was all a reminder that life can take anything from you at any time. This lesson is one that I don't think I'll ever grasp fully, but learning to be happy with what you already have is the second greatest lesson I learned from Vinland. The third lesson is that it takes 3 years to build something valuable. One of my favorite moments in the show is that it took Thorfinn and Einar 3 years to buy out their freedom. 3 years of doing the same boring shit of chopping down trees, getting rid of the tree trunks, making farmland, and planting wheat. 3 years of pure hard work, patience, and consistency to buy out their freedom. And I have the audacity to complain about not growing my YouTube channel. I have the audacity to complain about not reaching my dream physique after only 1 year of hitting the gym. Anything worth of value takes time, a lot of time. We all have the audacity to sit here and complain about where we could be, but it took these characters, these fictional characters, 3 years. 3 years! Just to buy out their freedom as slaves. We are the real slaves here. We are the slaves to the consumerism, the slaves to the scarcity mindset, and the belief that we're gonna be in complete anguish if we're not millionaires by 30. Bro, we just need to chill. We need to take a deep breath and realize that shit takes time. What's the rush in having everything figured out? All great things take time, so stop complaining and get to work. One thing I've been practicing now is whenever I upload a YouTube video, I don't look at the numbers anymore. I just go straight into the next video because I want to be so obsessed with my process that I don't want to give a shit about the outcome anymore. I don't care if I get 500 views. I don't care if I get 1,000 views. Cool, maybe I do get more views in one day than another. Who gives a shit? My process is more important. Be obsessed about that and go to work. And guys, I understand that it's normal to want to do well and see the results of your outcome, but I promise you, man, if you just detach from it for a bit, you're gonna see the results come to you because you're gonna forget about it. You have to ask yourself, what's the internal motivation of doing your action? Because it's your process that you're engaged in that will make you satisfied with your work rather than the results itself. So we should all learn that it takes 3 years to build something valuable, or at least build the foundations of something that you can be proud of. So let's cultivate patience from this lesson, learn from Thorfinn and Einar that it takes 3 years to build something great, and try to appreciate the fruits of your hard labor in the process rather than the result itself. The fourth lesson Vinland Saga teaches us is that we have to be incredibly strong to be kind. This is shown multiple times in the show through Thors and Thorfinn. Thors had many opportunities to kill Askeladd's men but chose not to. He chose to give up his ways of violence against the innocents to live a peaceful life. We also see this through Thorfinn later on in the show. Thorfinn chose not to fight back against those royal guards. He took 100 punches to the body and to the face without fighting back. He chose not to use violence against the people on the farm as well. We learn from these two characters that in order to do an act of kindness, you have to have the strength to stand up for what you believe in. You need to have strength in the masculine traits you cultivate through the courage of getting hurt without hurting others, the temperance of holding back your punches because you understand the harm it can cause to others, the justice in knowing when to fight back and when to stand down. And you see this when Thorfinn says, "Who am I to talk about peace if I came and started beating you all up?" He realizes that his just actions of not fighting proved his point in making peace even more. And you see this when the royal guards respected and acknowledged him as a true warrior after taking those 100 hits. And lastly, the wisdom that you might not hold all the answers, but you might learn something valuable in the pursuit of your pain. In order to be kind, you have to be strong first. Anyone can be nice and pretentious in this world, but it takes true strength to be kind to others, because it comes from a deep place in your heart of authenticity, knowing that you're capable of doing evil and doing harm to others, but you choose to stand down when it's crucial. Don't get me wrong, we should all defend ourselves when we get disrespected or our values questioned, but knowing when to defend yourself and when to let it go is very crucial as a man, and this is something that Thors and Thorfinn teaches us in the show. The final and greatest lesson: I have no enemies. What can this simple line mean? Can we truly have no enemies? When I first heard this from Thors, I thought he was crazy. I thought it was a fairy tale. Can we really go through life without any act of violence? But it's not until I saw Thorfinn's journey that got me to understand this line deeper. So this concept of I have no enemies, it's deeper than not giving violence to others. It actually goes in the sense of finding the kindness in others so you can find the kindness in yourself. When you choose to find one act of kindness in one person, even a person you hate, that's all it takes. That's really all it takes to dispute the fight. I remember I got into a heated argument with one of my best friends, Ali, and it could have just taken one act of violence to like really break our friendship. But instead in that moment, and I'm not perfect, bro, but in that one moment, I actually decided to hug him and say sorry. And you know what he did back? He gave me a hug back and he said sorry as well. It really just takes one act of kindness to just completely turn the other person upside down. How many of us have that self-sabotaging voice in your head that's just eating at you no matter how well you do? The reason we never feel like we're enough is because we view everyone as our enemies. In every domain of life, we make enemies with someone. In the gym, we want to look better than other people. In business, we want to do better numbers than others. And listen, there's nothing wrong with friendly competition and giving that big fuel of motivation to keep going on your goals. But what happens when it's not healthy anymore? What happens if that's all you care about? When it gets to the point where you're not even satisfied with how far you've come or what you have now, you have to ask yourself, is this really what I want? Not only this, but the more enemies that you perceive in your mind, the bigger you make yourself the enemy. When everyone is your enemy, you're always on survival mode. Your nervous system is jacked the F up. When nobody is your enemy, you live independently. You live more free. You see the kindness in others. My point is, if you always see others as your enemy, it will be that much harder for you to find the kindness in your heart to choose peace over anguish. Vinland Saga teaches us in order to have no enemies, we have to learn from our pain, enjoy what we have, be patient to build the foundations, and have the strength to choose kindness, and maybe then we will have moments of no enemies. This is how Thorfinn was able to take 100 punches to the face and get back up. It's through these lessons of manhood that Thorfinn went through that got him to realize what his father was always preaching about. Thorfinn endured many trials, suffered many battles, but he never gave up. This, my friends, is the greatest redemption story that has ever been written in fiction history. This show really added perspective to how I view my own life, and I hope this video helped you realize that it's never too late to embrace your true masculinity. Be the man who embraces the misery, the good, the ugly, the grind. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to sacrifice some blood. Don't be afraid to defend your values and your rights. Stand up for others while you're at it too. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel on what it means to be a man and find your true masculinity. I appreciate all your support. Until next time, guys.